Hi, and welcome to English Without Limit. I am Julia, your host, and I'm so glad you're here. If you've ever felt frustrated trying to follow fast English conversations, you're not alone. In fact, you're in exactly the right place. Today, I want to help you understand something important. Becoming a better English listener doesn't mean you need to be perfect. It doesn't mean you need to understand every single word. It starts with small habits, a little consistency, and most of all, the belief that you can train your ears to do what they were designed to do, understand patterns, sounds, and meaning step by step. So, take a deep breath with me. You don't need to chase perfection. You don't need to worry about grammar rules right now. This episode is about making listening feel natural and achievable. No matter where you are on your learning journey, whether you're commuting, cooking, or just relaxing, I want this moment to feel like a pause from the pressure and a return to confidence. You can do this. Let's begin with something honest. How often have you tried to follow a video, a podcast, or a conversation in English and felt completely lost? Maybe the words felt like a blur. Maybe you caught the beginning, but lost the meaning halfway through. Maybe you nodded and pretended to understand, just to avoid feeling embarrassed. I've heard these stories from learners all over the world, from Barcelona, Warsaw, Istanbul, Copenhagen, and I'll tell you this, you're not alone. Here's the truth. It's not a personal failure, it's just a lack of training, and that is something we can change. You don't need to speak fast to be fluent. You don't even need to understand fast conversations right away. What you need is a method. A way to approach listening that's clear, structured, and supportive. In this episode, we'll talk about how to practice with daily English. Real English, not textbook examples, not robotic pronunciation, but the kind of English you hear when someone orders coffee in London, answers the phone in Manchester, gives directions in Dublin, or checks into a hotel in Rome. That is what we're going to train your ears for. Now let me ask you something. Have you noticed that some people pick up English listening easily, while others struggle for years? It's not about talent, it's about exposure. It's about practice, but the right kind of practice. It's what I call smart listening. You don't need hours every day. You need the right 5 minutes, with the right kind of audio, repeated the right way. I remember talking to a listener named Lena from Munich. She'd been learning English for years, but every time someone asked her a question at work, she panicked. She was afraid she wouldn't understand them fast enough. So, we changed her approach. Instead of focusing on grammar and vocabulary, she began listening to just one short dialogue a day, 2 or 3 minutes. She played it while brushing her teeth, walking her dog, or waiting for the train. And guess what? After just 2 weeks, she felt calmer. She still didn't understand everything, but she understood enough. And that gave her confidence. That's what this episode is about. So, if you're thinking, I understand English when I read it, but not when I hear it, you're exactly where you need to be. And if you're thinking, I know what the words mean, but people speak too fast. Let's challenge that idea. Most people don't actually speak too fast. We just haven't trained our ears to hear English at its natural rhythm. But here's the great news. Your brain can learn that rhythm, just like it did in your native language. What you need is regular, clear practice. with small, focused steps that build over time. And that's what I'm here for. Before we dive in, I want to say something really important. This podcast is for you. When you support it by subscribing, leaving a review, or sharing it with a friend, you help our community grow. And the bigger we grow, the more resources we can create, and the more people we can reach. People who are struggling just like you once were. So if you're enjoying this content, take a moment, just a second, to hit that follow button or leave a comment. It might seem small, but it makes a big difference. And it helps me know what's truly working for you. Now, I want to say something from the heart. Learning English isn't just about learning a language. It's about expanding your world. It's about giving yourself more options, more freedom, and more confidence. Whether you want to travel, work abroad, connect with new people, or simply understand the media you love, improving your listening skills is a big part of that journey. And it's a journey you don't have to take alone. In today's episode, I'm going to guide you through practical ways to improve your English listening. You'll hear stories from real learners living in real cities, just like you. You'll get simple, actionable tips you can use today. And more than anything, my hope is that by the end, you'll feel more empowered and a lot less overwhelmed. Listening to English doesn't have to feel like a mystery. It can become something familiar, something enjoyable, something you even look forward to. So, as we begin, I want you to stay relaxed. Let the words come to you. You don't have to understand every single word. That's not the goal. The goal is to enjoy the process, to connect with meaning, and to trust that your brain is learning. Because it really is. Every time you listen, even when you miss things, your brain is adjusting. It's learning the patterns, the rhythm, the sound. That progress, it's real, even when you can't see it right away. So, here's my invitation to you today. Just listen. No pressure, no fear, just curiosity and attention. If something feels fast, that's okay. We'll work through it together. By the end of this episode, my hope is that you'll not only understand more English, but also feel excited to keep going. That's how fluency begins. Not with perfection, but with presence. Just you, right here, right now, giving your brain the chance to grow. And if any part of this resonates with you, if you've ever felt alone in your learning, if you've ever felt stuck or unsure, please remember, this community is for you. You belong here. You're not behind. You're not too late. You are right on time. Let's make listening easier. Together. Now, let's talk about something I hear all the time from learners. I can't understand native speakers. They speak too fast. And I get it. It really does feel like the words come at you like a wave. Before you've caught the beginning, they're already at the end of the sentence. It's frustrating, and it makes you think, maybe I'm just not good at English. But I want to challenge that idea, because the real issue isn't speed, it's structure. Think about it like this. If most of your learning came from textbooks, grammar exercises, or slow recordings, then your brain is trained to expect a very different version of English. It's used to seeing every word clearly spaced, with perfect punctuation, and all the time in the world to process. But real English, spoken English, that's a different rhythm altogether. When someone says, "What are you doing?" Zarinya, it doesn't sound like 4 clean words. It sounds like, "What you doing?" or "What you doing?" And unless your brain has heard that enough times, it won't recognize it. That's not your fault. It's not about ability. It's just about exposure and training. Let me tell you a story. This is about Isabelle. She's from Lyon, France, and she moved to Dublin for a new job. Now, Isabelle had studied English for years. She could read long articles, pass exams, even write essays. But when she started working in an open office with fast-talking, friendly colleagues, she felt completely lost. People asked her questions during meetings, simple ones, and she just couldn't keep up. She thought, I need more vocabulary. So she made word lists. She thought, maybe my grammar is weak. So she reviewed tenses and rules. But nothing worked, because the real issue wasn't grammar. It was listening to real English every day. So we changed her approach. Every morning before work, she listened to one short 2-minute dialogue. Just one. No reading, no pausing, just listening. Then she listened again, this time reading along. Then once more, without the text. That's it. 5 or 6 minutes a day. After just 2 weeks, something happened. A coworker came to her desk and said, Hey, you got a minute? Normally, Isabelle would freeze, but this time, she recognized the question immediately. She didn't need to translate. She just smiled and said, Sure, and it felt natural. That's what I want for you. Moments that feel clear, conversations that feel comfortable, progress that feels real. That's what happens when you expose your brain to the real structure of English, repeatedly, consistently, and in short bursts. Your brain stops seeing English as a collection of written grammar rules. Instead, it starts hearing it as a living, breathing rhythm. It recognizes patterns. It starts to expect certain combinations of sounds. And slowly, it stops being shocked by the speed. I want you to think about your own experience for a moment. Have you ever studied English for months, or even years, only to feel completely confused when you try to understand a movie or follow a real conversation? Have you ever felt confident writing an email, but completely lost during a phone call? That gap you're feeling, that's the disconnect between the English you studied and the English people actually speak. This is where many learners get stuck. They keep thinking the problem is their memory or their grammar or their accent. But really, the issue is that they've never trained their ears for the structure of spoken English, not the slow, clean, artificial English you hear in some apps. I mean real, daily, messy, emotional, imperfect, beautiful English. The kind of English that happens at the coffee shop, in the hallway, or at the dinner table. I'm not saying grammar and vocabulary aren't important. Of course they are. But they're not enough. Because language isn't just what you see. It's what you hear, what you feel, what you respond to. Its rhythm, its tone, its stress. And if your only exposure to English has been through books or exercises, your brain is missing the most important part, the sound structure. Now, I'm not going to tell you this shift happens overnight. Isabelle, one learner I know, still had to listen many times. She still had moments when she didn't catch everything. But her mindset changed. She stopped blaming herself and started retraining her ears. She understood that fluency isn't about catching every word. It's about recognizing enough to follow the flow and trusting that your brain is adjusting even when it feels difficult. And the beautiful part is, once you start hearing structure, speed becomes less scary. You stop hearing a wall of sound and you start hearing pieces, phrases, expressions, signals. You got a minute? Want to grab lunch? Let me check. These are real, natural expressions that come up every day, but they don't follow the written rules. They live in the rhythm, and the more you listen to that rhythm, the more your brain will make sense of it. So, if you've been telling yourself, people just speak too fast, I want you to pause and ask yourself, am I listening to real conversations? Am I training my ears for natural patterns? Or am I only studying what's written on the page? Because the moment you shift your focus from speed to structure, everything changes. That's how you build real understanding. That's how you move from confusion to clarity. And that's how you stop feeling like English is something you're chasing and start feeling like it's something you can truly live in. When we try to understand English word by word, it often feels slow, heavy, and confusing. That's because our brain isn't designed to process language one word at a time. Language, especially spoken language, happens in chunks, small, familiar groups of words that go together. These chunks are the key to real understanding. They give us rhythm, tone, and meaning. Without needing to stop and translate every individual word, when learners shift from memorizing vocabulary to listening for phrases in context, something powerful happens. They start to understand faster, with more confidence, and with much less stress. I've worked with many learners who believed they needed to study more vocabulary to improve their listening. They would carry notebooks filled with new words and translations. They could give you the definition of checkout or receipt, but they couldn't follow a sentence like, "Do you want the receipt in the bag?" because they'd never heard those words used together in real speech. That's the difference between knowing words and understanding phrases. Our brain remembers and processes what it hears in patterns, not isolated pieces. That shift from collecting words to recognizing chunks is one of the most important changes you can make in your listening practice. Let me tell you about Ahmed. He's from Cairo, and last year he moved to Berlin to study architecture. Before he left Egypt, he spent months preparing his English. He memorized word lists, studied grammar rules, and read news articles in English every morning. He told me he felt ready. But when he arrived in Berlin and started using English in real life, at the grocery store, the train station, the campus cafe, he froze. People spoke to him, and even though he knew every word individually, he couldn't understand what they were saying. It all felt too fast, too fluid, and too unpredictable. One day he went to a local supermarket to buy a few things. He stood in line, rehearsing what he would say. He had practiced vocabulary like cashier, bag, receipt, and change. But when it was his turn and the cashier asked, "Would you like the receipt in the bag or separate?" he panicked. He recognized receipt and bag, but the rest of the sentence went too quickly. He didn't know what "would you like" or "in the bag" or "separate" sounded like when said together. He just stood there, frozen, unsure how to respond. That moment stayed with him. He realized something important. Knowing vocabulary wasn't enough. He needed to hear real English, the way people actually speak. That's when he started doing something different. Every morning, he listened to short daily dialogues and conversations about shopping, ordering food, asking for help, or giving directions. Just 2 or 3 minutes each day. Instead of focusing on individual words, he listened to how words work together. He listened to tone, rhythm, and the way common phrases were used naturally. He didn't pause the audio to translate. He just listened and then listened again. Slowly, the patterns started to stick. After a couple of weeks, he went back to the same supermarket. This time, when the cashier asked the same question, he understood it completely. Would you like the receipt in the bag or separate? It sounded familiar, like something he'd already practiced. And that's the magic of listening to phrases instead of words. Your brain starts to expect the next part. It knows what usually comes next in a sentence. You don't have to translate, you just understand. Think about the phrases you hear often in your life. Things like, "How can I help you?" Or, "I'm just looking. Thanks." These aren't made up of complicated vocabulary, but they're powerful because they're used again and again in real conversations. When you train your ears to recognize them, you stop getting stuck on the little things. You hear the meaning, not just the words. Phrases are also easier for your brain to remember. Think about the difference between trying to remember 5 individual words. Would, you, like, a, and bag, versus just remembering the full phrase, "Would you like a bag?" The second one sticks faster because it has a purpose, it has rhythm, it has context. That's how our brains naturally absorb language. We don't learn by building single bricks. We learn by seeing the full wall. When you practice listening this way, focused on phrases and context, it's not just your comprehension that improves. Your speaking becomes more fluid, too. You start to use those same chunks when you respond. Instead of building your answers word by word, you pull from real phrases you've already heard. You don't have to think so hard. You speak with more ease and confidence. That's exactly what happened with Ahmed. After a few weeks of this practice, he stopped feeling anxious in daily conversations. When someone asked, "Do you want to eat here or take it to go?" Or, "Could you fill this out for me?" He didn't panic. These were the same phrases he had listened to in his morning practice. His brain recognized the chunks. He didn't need to understand every single word. Every word. He just needed to hear the meaning, and that changed everything. So, if you've been struggling to follow conversations in English, I want you to ask yourself, am I listening to real phrases in real situations, or am I still trying to understand everything word by word? The second method will slow you down. It will make you tired and frustrated. But the first one, listening for phrases, repeating chunks, hearing real context, that will set you free. Because when your brain starts hearing English the way it's spoken, fluency stops being something far away. It becomes something you can feel, something you can live in, one conversation at a time. One of the most powerful tools you have for learning English is repetition. I know it might sound simple, even boring, but repetition is exactly what your brain loves. It's how your brain naturally learns patterns, builds speed, and creates confidence. Think about how you learned your first language. You didn't study grammar rules or memorize vocabulary lists. You heard the same words, the same expressions, the same situations again and again, until they became second nature. That's how your brain works best, through consistent, repeated exposure. When it comes to listening in English, repetition isn't just helpful, it's essential, especially with audio. Listening to the same conversation multiple times gives your brain the chance to relax. The first time, everything feels fast and unfamiliar. You catch a few words here and there, maybe the main idea, but you miss details. The second time, you notice more. You start to hear how the speaker connects their words, how the tone rises and falls, and how certain expressions repeat. The third or fourth time, it starts to feel familiar. You anticipate what's coming. Your brain isn't guessing anymore. It's recognizing. I want to tell you about someone who discovered this through experience. His name is Luca. He's a university student in Milan, and he was feeling really discouraged about his listening skills. He told me that every time he watched a video or listened to an English podcast, he felt overwhelmed. The words moved too fast. The sentences blended together, and even when he replayed it once, it didn't seem to help much. He kept switching to different audios, hoping something would finally click. But he never stayed long enough with any one resource. It felt like running in circles. We had a conversation, and I asked him to try something different. I gave him 1 2-minute dialogue. Nothing special, just a simple conversation between two friends planning their weekend. I told him to listen to it once each morning while walking to class. Same time, same audio, every day for a week. No pressure to memorize. Just listen. He was skeptical at first, but he agreed to give it a try. The first day, he said it felt like usual. Fast and hard to follow. But by the third day, something changed. He started to recognize phrases he hadn't noticed before. Like, "What are you up to?" and "Sounds like a plan." He hadn't learned those in school, but now they were sticking in his mind. By day 5, he told me he could hear the tone of voice more clearly. When the speaker was being casual, when they were inviting, when they were joking. He wasn't just hearing the words, he was understanding the feeling. By the end of the week, he could predict the responses before they came. That one short conversation had become familiar territory. And with that familiarity came confidence. That's the magic of repetition. Your brain needs time to adjust. Listening once or twice is often not enough. But when you give your brain the chance to revisit the same material, something incredible happens. You stop trying so hard to translate or decode every word. Instead, you start recognizing chunks, rhythm, and meaning. You stop focusing on survival and start focusing on connection. Here's something else I've seen again and again. Learners who repeat audio feel less anxious in real conversations. Why? Because real conversations aren't that different from what you hear in good listening practice. The same phrases, the same tones, the same patterns appear over and over again in daily life. When you've heard them enough in a safe, low-pressure space, like a 2-minute audio, you're not surprised when they show up in the real world. Your brain is ready. It's already met these phrases before. I want to challenge you to think about this right now. What is one short English conversation you could listen to every day for the next week? It doesn't need to be complicated. It could be about going to the store, booking an appointment, talking about weekend plans, or catching up with a friend. The important part is that it's short, natural, and useful. Something you might actually hear or use in real life. Choose one and stick with it. And don't worry if it feels too fast the first time. That's normal, but the second time and the third time and the fourth time, that's when your brain starts building pathways. That's when it begins to say, I know this. I've heard this before. And the more you do it, the faster you'll improve. Not because you're forcing yourself, but because your brain is doing what it's naturally good at. Finding patterns, adapting to sound, and remembering through repetition. One of the best things about this kind of listening is that it fits into your day easily. You don't need to sit down and study for hours. You can play the audio while brushing your teeth, riding the train, walking the dog, or waiting in line. You don't even have to give it your full attention at first. Just let the sound enter your world. Let it become part of your day. Repetition is quiet but powerful. It works in the background, shaping your understanding even when you're not aware of it. Luca told me that after just 1 week, his confidence grew. He didn't need to look up every word anymore. He didn't feel lost in long sentences. That one dialogue had opened a door. And now he was ready to go further. He started repeating other short audios. He created his own small library of everyday conversations and listened to them on repeat. His listening skills improved, not because he studied harder, but because he listened smarter. And it all started with one repeated audio. So many learners make the mistake of chasing new content all the time. They listen once, get frustrated, and move on to something else. But the real power is in staying with one short, useful audio until it becomes part of you. That's how language moves from the outside to the inside. That's how fluency begins. Not with endless input, but with meaningful repetition that gives your brain a chance to grow strong, fast, and confident. So if you've ever thought, "I'm not good at listening," maybe what you really need is a new approach. Maybe your brain is just waiting for you to hear the same thing more than once. Maybe you're closer to confidence than you think. All it takes is one small practice, repeated with purpose, and your brain will do the rest. I want to talk to you about one habit that silently slows your listening more than almost anything else. Translating in your head. I know it feels like the logical thing to do. You hear a sentence in English, and your brain immediately tries to find that same sentence in your native language. It's automatic. But here's the problem. Translation creates delay. It builds a wall between you and the real meaning of what you're hearing. Instead of being present with the sound, with the moment, with the context, your brain is jumping between two languages, trying to match everything perfectly. And that just doesn't work in real-time conversation. What works instead is visualization. When you begin to visualize what's happening in a conversation, something powerful happens. Your brain wakes up. It becomes focused. It becomes present. You're no longer trying to turn sounds into grammar. You're understanding a scene, a moment, a story. And stories, your brain understands deeply. We've communicated that way for thousands of years, not by analyzing language, but by seeing situations, hearing tone, feeling emotion, and understanding intention. Visualization turns listening into a living experience, and that experience creates real comprehension. Let me tell you about Sophia, a listener from Warsaw. She used to feel overwhelmed watching movies in English, even with subtitles. She told me, "The actors talk too fast, and by the time I try to translate one line, the scene has already moved on." She was stuck in a loop, hearing English, trying to translate, missing the next line, getting frustrated, again and again. Then she tried something different. Instead of translating, she started visualizing. She picked short movie scenes or simple audio dialogues. She closed her eyes and imagined the situation. She didn't try to understand every word. She just asked herself, who is talking? Where are they? What are they doing? What's the emotion? What's the goal of this moment? It was like creating a mental movie, and slowly, things began to shift. Sophia realized that when she pictured the scene, her brain stopped worrying about translation. It focused on meaning. She didn't need to hear every word because she felt the rhythm. She guessed the tone. She sensed the relationship. She even began to predict what would come next. Within a few weeks, Sophia was following scenes without subtitles for the first time, not because she learned 100 new words, but because she stopped translating and started trusting her imagination. Visualization activates a different part of the brain, a part that's creative, fast, and in tune with real communication. When you imagine a scene, your brain uses more than just words. It uses tone, background sounds, emotion, and pause to fill in the blanks. And that's exactly how native speakers understand each other. They don't hear every word clearly, but they hear enough, and their brain fills in the rest. You can do that too. You just need to stop translating and start seeing. I always recommend learners choose short, simple dialogues for this practice, not because the vocabulary is easy, but because the scene is easy to imagine. Let's say you hear, "Hi, can I get a small latte to go?" Don't think, "What does that mean in my language?" Instead, picture it. Someone walking to the counter, smiling, speaking to a barista. You see the cup. You hear the friendly tone. And just like that, your brain gets the meaning. Without needing to translate a single word, this also works with tone of voice. If someone says, "Oh, really?" but they sound surprised, you can imagine their face. Are they curious? Sarcastic? Excited? Those are layers of meaning most learners miss when they focus only on words. But if you let yourself see the scene, those meanings become much easier to catch. And there's another benefit: memory. When you link a word or phrase to an image, you remember it longer. You're not just memorizing definitions, you're storing experiences. That's how children learn language. They hear, they see, they feel. And that's how you can learn too. If you're used to translating everything, this might feel strange at first. But start small. Next time you listen to a short English audio, close your eyes and ask, who are these people? Where are they? What's around them? Are they sitting, walking, laughing, arguing? What objects are nearby? What's the mood? Let your imagination guide your ears. You don't need perfect grammar. You need context. And visualization gives you that context. It helps you step into the conversation instead of standing outside it, trying to decode it. It turns listening into connection. And when your brain feels connected, understanding happens faster, more naturally. Sophia told me that after just a few weeks, she started visualizing without thinking. When someone spoke to her in English, on the street, in a shop, her brain automatically built the scene. She wasn't translating, she was responding, and for the first time, she felt like part of the conversation, not just chasing it. So if you've been depending on translation, I want to encourage you. Try something new. Pick a short audio. Close your eyes. Visualize the moment. You don't need to understand every word. Just experience the conversation. Let your brain connect the sounds to the story. Let it work the way it was designed to. You'll be surprised how quickly it all starts to click. Not because you're translating faster, but because you're understanding deeper. And that kind of understanding, it lasts. It builds. It gives you confidence. It makes English feel less like something you study and more like something you can live. One of the most important things I've learned working with English learners from all over the world is this: the content you choose matters. If you want to improve your listening, you need to focus on conversations that actually match your real life. Not abstract lectures, not complicated articles, but real conversations about real things you actually do, like going to the grocery store, talking to a coworker, taking the bus, or just chatting about your hobbies. Because when the topic is relevant, your brain pays attention. It connects faster. It remembers more. And it learns in a way that actually sticks. Why? Because language is about connection. And we connect most deeply with language that reflects our world. I see so many learners spending hours trying to understand long academic texts or advanced news reports. And yes, those can be helpful, but they're not the best place to start if your goal is to feel more confident in everyday conversations. Your brain needs language you can actually use. That means choosing listening materials that match your daily routines, your environment, and the people you speak to. Let me tell you about Miguel. He's from Madrid, and he moved to Amsterdam for an internship at a tech company. Before moving, he spent months preparing his English, but most of that preparation was academic. He listened to university lectures, read business articles, and practiced high-level vocabulary. It helped him understand formal emails and presentations, but when it came to daily life, he struggled. On his first day at work, a colleague asked him, "Hey, you free for lunch later?" And he froze. Not because he didn't understand the individual words, but because he had never heard them used that way, in that context. It kept happening. He was fine in formal meetings, but completely lost when ordering lunch, answering the office phone, or giving directions to a delivery driver. Everything felt overwhelming. That's when we had a conversation, and I asked him one simple question. What kind of English do you need? Right now? Today? This week? His answer? He needed to talk to coworkers, ask for food, respond to quick questions, understand directions on the street. So we made a new plan. He stopped focusing on academic content, and he started listening to short, real conversations, the kind he was actually facing every day. For example, we picked one audio about someone ordering food at a cafe. Another was a short phone call confirming a meeting time. One more was two people talking about their weekend plans. Simple, yes, but useful. And exactly what Miguel needed. He listened to those same few dialogues over and over. Just 2 or 3 minutes a day. Sometimes while walking to work, sometimes while making coffee. And he wasn't just listening. He was training his brain to recognize tone, rhythm, and natural English phrases. And then, something amazing happened. After just 2 weeks, Miguel felt more relaxed. He didn't panic when someone spoke to him. He didn't freeze. He started responding, not because he memorized perfect answers, but because the conversation sounded familiar. His brain had already practiced them. One day he told me he was in the elevator, and a coworker asked, "Busy day ahead?" A month earlier, he would have smiled awkwardly and stayed silent. But this time, he smiled back and said, "Yeah, lots of meetings today." Simple, but real and confident. That's the power of choosing content that matches your life. So here's what I want for you. I want your listening practice to feel meaningful. I want it to prepare you for real conversations, not just help you pass a test. So take a moment and ask yourself, What do I talk about most in daily life? What kinds of conversations do I want to understand better? Maybe it's ordering food. Maybe it's small talk at work. Maybe it's checking in at a hotel or talking to your child's teacher. Whatever it is, that is where your listening should begin. You don't need to start with advanced topics. You don't need long recordings full of complex words. Start with what you know. Start with what you need. That's where the fastest progress happens. Because when the topic is familiar, your brain already has a map. It knows the context. It recognizes the situation. And that gives you an incredible advantage. You're free to focus on sound, tone, rhythm, instead of struggling to figure out what's going on. And there's something else I want you to remember. When your listening practice matches your world, you don't just improve your skills, you build confidence. Every time you understand something in a real-life moment, your brain says, "Yes, I'm getting this." And that motivation, it builds fast. You stop feeling like you're learning English. You start feeling like you're living it. This approach works at every level. If you're a beginner, start with basic conversations, buying groceries, introducing yourself, asking simple questions. If you're intermediate, focus on your daily routine, workplace conversations, making appointments, dealing with customer service. If you're more advanced, start exploring casual speech, idioms, and emotional tone, but still within topics you actually experience. You don't need to listen to everything. You need to listen to the right things, the things that mirror your world, the moments that matter to you. Miguel's progress didn't come from working harder. It came from listening smarter. He stopped chasing difficult English and focused on the English he actually needed. And the result? He felt calmer, more confident, more capable. That's what happens when your practice meets your reality. So today, here's your challenge. Think about your daily life, the people you talk to, the places you go, the small conversations you want to feel more confident in. Then, choose one short audio that matches that world. Repeat it. Listen for tone. Picture the situation. Let it become familiar. Because when the topic matches your real life, listening becomes more than a skill. It becomes part of who you are. And that's when fluency starts to grow. Not from the outside, but from within. Many English learners feel anxious when they listen. And it's not because they're bad at English, it's because they're trying to do too much at once. Think about it. You're not just listening. You're also trying to understand every word. Think about grammar. Remember vocabulary, and prepare your response, all at the same time. That's a lot of pressure. And when your brain is under pressure, it can't relax enough to actually absorb what it's hearing. But what if I told you, you don't need to respond right away? That just listening, without needing to speak, can be one of the most powerful tools to grow your confidence. Listening is a skill that deserves its own space. It's not a test. You don't need to prove anything. You're not on a stage. When you listen, you're training your brain. You're teaching it to recognize sounds, patterns, and rhythm. That takes time and repetition, not stress. When you separate listening from the pressure to reply, you give your brain a chance to actually listen, without fear, without judgment, without rushing. And that is where real progress begins. Let me tell you about Helena. She's from Athens. She told me she understood grammar. She could write emails at work. But in real conversations, she froze. She said the hardest part wasn't speaking. It was listening. People would start talking, and her mind would go into panic mode. What did they just say? What do I need to answer? Past tense or present perfect? Do I know the right vocabulary? All those thoughts came rushing in, and she couldn't focus on the conversation. The pressure to respond made her listening even worse, so I suggested something different. I told her, forget speaking, just for a little while. Treat listening as a separate skill, like a workout, for your ears. No notebooks, no exercises, no answers. Just listen. I told her to find a podcast in English that felt natural, friendly, and relaxed. Not formal, not academic, just human. She chose a podcast about travel stories. Every day while cleaning her apartment or doing dishes, she listened. Sometimes she paid close attention. Sometimes she just let it play in the background. No pressure, no pausing, no rewinding, just listening. And something amazing happened. After about a week, she started hearing phrases more clearly. She noticed tone. She heard emotion. She could tell when someone was joking, when they were serious, when they were excited, even if she didn't catch every word. Her ears were learning the rhythm of English. One day she told me, "The biggest change happened when I stopped trying to control the process." She gave herself permission to just listen, and it changed everything. Soon, she started recognizing expressions she'd never noticed before. You know what I mean? That was totally unexpected. These weren't in her grammar books, but now they felt natural. Listening without pressure creates a kind of freedom. You're not focused on getting it right. You're focused on understanding, on connecting. And that's when learning really begins. You start noticing the small details. Tone changes when someone's being polite. The way people pause when they're thinking, the little filler words, well, actually, I mean, these things are small, but they are the glue that holds conversation together. And when you hear them enough times, you don't just understand them, you feel them. This is how you learned your first language. You weren't asked to respond, you just listened. You absorbed. And slowly your brain put it all together. The same can happen with English. If you give your ears time. Helena? After a few weeks of passive listening, she joined an English conversation group. She didn't prepare. She just showed up. Someone asked her about a recent trip, and without even thinking, she used phrases from the podcast. She didn't memorize them. They just came out. That's natural learning. That's why I tell learners all the time, make listening a daily background habit. It doesn't have to be intense. It just has to be consistent. Let English fill the quiet spaces in your day. While brushing your teeth, walking to the store, washing dishes. Just let the music of the language play. You are not being tested. You're not performing. You're building a skill, quietly, steadily, with patience. And that skill, it will show up when it's time to speak. You'll respond more naturally, not from memorized scripts, but from familiar sound. That's how confidence grows. And I want to tell you one more story. This one's about Elena. She lives in Vienna, works at a bookstore, and studies international tourism. She loves the idea of travel, of meeting new people. But English listening terrified her, especially in fast, practical situations, hotels, airports, phone calls. She told me about checking into a hotel in Lisbon. The receptionist gave her the usual details: breakfast hours, checkout time, Wi-Fi code, but she couldn't follow it. She asked for it 3 times, still felt unsure. She told me, I just wish I could slow the world down. Just a little. So I gave her a different approach. Forget long podcasts. Forget fast interviews. Just focus on short, clear, everyday conversations. 2 minutes, simple setting, familiar vocabulary. We started with small audios, booking an appointment, asking for directions, talking to hotel staff. Each one was under 3 minutes. No guessing. You always knew what the conversation was about. Elena listened to one per day. No subtitles, just her ears. She played it once to get the big idea. Again, to catch key phrases. Once more, to notice tone. After a few days, she recognized patterns. How people confirm times. How they ask politely. How they say things like, "Your checkout is at 11 o'clock. Would you like to schedule your appointment for tomorrow?" Soon, she re-listened to a dialogue from the day before, and it felt completely different. It wasn't too fast anymore, because now her brain understood the context, and that changed everything. Fast English didn't scare her because she knew what to expect. And just a few weeks later, she took another trip, this time to Copenhagen. She checked into a hotel and the receptionist spoke quickly. But guess what? She didn't panic. She understood everything the first time. That moment, it made all her quiet practice feel worth it. And that's what I want for you. To feel calm when English comes at full speed, not because the world slowed down, but because you trained your brain to keep up. So here's your challenge. Find one short, familiar audio. Listen every day this week. No pressure, no grammar, just ears. Let it play. Let it repeat. Let your brain do what it does best. Because when listening becomes relaxed, everything starts to change. You'll feel it. You'll hear it. And one day, just like Elena, you'll realize you're ready. Let me tell you about Elena. You've heard about her before. She's been working on her English listening for a while now. And even though she can now understand longer content, she still breaks it into smaller parts. She pauses, reflects, repeats. Why? Because she's creating her own structure inside something more complex. That one simple habit, it changed everything. You don't have to understand everything at once. You just have to create the right conditions. Clear topics, real conversations, predictable situations. When you do that every day, English doesn't feel like it's speeding past you. It starts to feel like something you can actually follow. Just like Elena. And now I want to share something important. Consistency beats intensity. It's tempting to sit down and study for hours once or twice a week. But that's not what works best. What works is short, steady practice. 5 minutes a day. Every day. Let me introduce you to David from Stockholm. David is a software engineer who rides the train to work every morning. Before, he would try to study English in long weekend sessions, but it was draining. He often gave up. Then he changed his approach. Just 5 minutes a day? On the train, short dialogues, travel tips, conversations about ordering food. No pressure, just listening. After 2 weeks, he noticed a change. The voices became clearer. The pace felt more familiar. He didn't need to pause. His brain was adjusting, and that motivated him to keep going. The train became his classroom, a small space, a small habit, a big result. David's story reminds us of something powerful. You don't need extra time. You need everyday moments. Play a short audio while you're cooking, walking, cleaning. Let it be part of your life, not a separate task. And over time, those 5-minute sessions transform your skills. You'll catch new phrases, understand stories, react more naturally. Why? Because repetition creates recognition, and recognition builds confidence. When language becomes familiar, it becomes yours. And here's one more story to guide you. Noor from Oslo worked so hard on her English. She listened to podcasts, watched videos, but she kept pausing, rewinding, looking up words, every few seconds. It was exhausting. It felt like she was stuck. She never made it past 5 minutes of content. She wasn't listening for meaning. She was chasing perfection. So I told her something simple. Language is about meaning, not every single word. Use the context. Let your brain guess. Keep going. At first, it was hard, but she listened to short clips, 2 to 3 minutes. She didn't pause. She just listened. Then she listened again, catching more each time. She realized that understanding 70% was enough. She followed the story. She stayed relaxed. And slowly, listening stopped being stressful. It became something she enjoyed. That's the shift I want you to make too. Start with short, clear conversations. Play them daily. Don't pause. Don't translate. Focus on the moment, the mood, the message. Let your ears adjust to the rhythm of real English. Let the language come to you. It's not about listening perfectly. It's about listening consistently. And when you do that, you don't just learn English. You begin to live in it. In fact, Noor found that she could enjoy English content much more without constantly stopping and starting. One day, she told me she was watching a popular English TV show without subtitles and noticed she wasn't pausing every few seconds anymore. She could follow the story, laugh at the jokes, and understand the emotions, even if she didn't know every expression. She felt more relaxed, more confident. That was a big step for her. She learned that language learning isn't about perfection. It's about communication. This idea, focusing on the big picture rather than every single word, is one of the most useful strategies for improving your listening. It's the difference between decoding and understanding. Decoding means translating each word individually. That slows you down and breaks the flow. Understanding means catching the message, the feeling, and the intention. That's where real fluency lives. When you listen, your brain is working hard to put together sounds, meanings, and context. If you focus on every word, your brain can't keep up. You get stuck, and your confidence drops. But when you focus on the idea, your brain uses clues from the conversation, the tone of voice, the topic, and even body language if you're watching a video to fill in what's missing. This skill takes practice, but it's one anyone can develop. If you're used to pausing or translating every word, try this exercise. Pick a short audio or video. Listen all the way through without stopping. Don't worry if you miss things. Just focus on the story or conversation. After you finish, ask yourself, what was the main message? What happened? What were they talking about? Then listen again if you want, and try to catch more details. Over time, you'll notice your understanding improves, and you'll feel less need to pause. Remember, you don't have to know every word to understand English. What matters is that you connect with the message, feel the emotion, and follow the conversation. Language is about communication, not perfection. When you accept that, your listening becomes easier, more enjoyable, and more natural. Nora's story shows us that trusting the context and focusing on the idea can change everything. She stopped being afraid of missing words and started enjoying English in a way she never thought possible. You can do this too. Let go of the need to catch every word. Start listening for meaning. Your brain will thank you, and your confidence will grow. So next time you listen, try to relax. Don't stop every few seconds. Trust the context. Focus on the big picture. Understanding 70% or more is enough to keep up and enjoy real conversations. That mindset shift is a game changer, and it will help take your listening skills to the next level. One of the things I always emphasize about learning English listening is this. It's not just about logic or understanding every word perfectly. It's about feeling the language, the emotions behind the words. When you listen with emotion, your brain remembers much more easily. You don't just store words as vocabulary, you connect them to real feelings and situations. That makes them stick naturally. Emotional engagement turns language learning into a richer experience. I want to share a story about Anna from Budapest. Anna struggled with traditional listening practice. She tried audio lessons, podcasts, news clips, but often found them dry and hard to focus on. The words felt like a list of sounds rather than something alive. Then she discovered a new way to practice. She started watching romantic comedy scenes in English. At first, it was just for fun, but she noticed something important. She felt connected to the characters' feelings, whether it was the excitement of a new date, the awkwardness of a misunderstanding, or the joy of a happy ending. That emotional connection made the English much easier to remember. Anna told me when she watched these scenes, she wasn't just listening with her ears. She was listening with her heart. She laughed at the jokes. She felt tense during the dramatic moments. Because of this, the phrases and expressions stuck with her in a way textbooks never managed. Instead of mechanical repetition, she was experiencing English in context, full of life and meaning. This emotional engagement helped Anna in several ways. First, it made her more motivated to practice regularly because the content was enjoyable and relatable. Second, it helped her notice the tone, pitch, and rhythm of spoken English, key to natural listening. When a speaker is angry, happy, or confused, their voice changes, and those changes help you understand the message beyond the words. Third, because she was emotionally involved, her brain created stronger memory connections, making it easier to recall phrases in real conversations. Listening with emotion is a powerful way to deepen your connection with English. It's not just about logic or grammar rules. It's about feeling the language as people use it in real life. When you hear laughter, surprise, or frustration, you're not only understanding the words, you're understanding the human experience behind them. That makes listening more meaningful and learning more natural. If you want to try this approach, start by picking audio or videos that make you feel something. It could be scenes from a movie, funny podcasts, interviews where speakers share personal stories, or even songs. The key is choosing material that resonates with you emotionally. When you care about what you're hearing, your brain is more engaged and your listening improves faster. Also, pay attention to the emotions in the voices you hear. Notice how people stress certain words when excited or slow down when sad. These emotional clues are part of the language, just as important as vocabulary or grammar. By tuning into these signals, you'll find it easier to understand not just what is said, but how it's said. Anna's experience shows how emotions can transform listening practice. Instead of struggling with dry, boring audio, she found joy and connection in romantic comedy scenes. This emotional engagement made English feel real and alive. She stopped thinking of listening as a chore and started enjoying it as a way to experience stories and feelings. So when you listen to English, try to go beyond the words. Let yourself feel curiosity, laughter, excitement, or even a little frustration. Use those feelings as a bridge to connect with the language. When you do that, you'll notice your listening becomes clearer, more natural, and much more enjoyable. Your brain will remember phrases faster, and your confidence will grow. Remember, language is a human tool. It's meant to express feelings, ideas, and experiences. When you listen with emotion, you tap into the heart of communication. That's where real fluency begins. Not just knowing words, but feeling them. Try this with your next listening session and see how it changes your connection with English. One of the most effective ways to improve both your English listening and speaking at the same time is a technique called shadowing. Shadowing means you listen to a conversation or dialogue and then repeat what you hear immediately after, trying to match the rhythm, tone, and pace of the speaker. It's like being a language mirror. This technique trains your brain and mouth to work together, helping you develop a natural flow and intonation in English. When you shadow, you're not just repeating words, you're copying the music of the language. Let me tell you about Thomas from Krakow. He discovered the power of shadowing by recording himself. Thomas wanted to improve his listening skills, but also to sound more natural when he spoke. He started with simple customer service dialogues, common conversations you might hear at a store or hotel. He listened carefully, then recorded himself repeating each line. At first, Thomas said his voice sounded robotic and unnatural. He sounded stiff, like reading a script instead of having a real conversation. That's normal when you start shadowing. English rhythms and intonations can feel strange, especially if your native language is very different. Thomas almost gave up after a few days because it felt awkward, but he kept going. He knew discomfort was part of the process. Every time he listened and repeated, he trained his brain and mouth to sync with English better. After about 2 weeks of daily practice, Thomas noticed a big change. His voice sounded more natural. The robotic tone disappeared. He matched the rhythm and tone of the speakers more closely. He said it felt like he was finding the music in English, the ups, downs, pauses, and flow that make conversations sound real and alive. That was a breakthrough for him. Shadowing helped Thomas in more ways than just his pronunciation. Because he focused on rhythm and tone, he became a better listener. He started to anticipate what speakers would say next, and he understood conversations more easily. His brain learned to process English, not as separate words, but as connected sounds with meaning and emotion. When he spoke with others, his conversations felt smoother and more confident. One of the best things about shadowing is that you can do it anywhere, anytime. You don't need a teacher or a partner. All you need is a recording device and some audio you like. It could be short dialogues, podcast snippets, or even clips from movies. The key is to listen carefully and try to repeat immediately, matching the speaker's pace and tone as closely as possible. If you're new to shadowing, start with very short pieces, just a few sentences. Listen once or twice to get the feel, then record yourself repeating it. Don't worry if you don't get it perfect. The goal is to practice rhythm and natural flow, not to memorize every word perfectly. Over time, You'll find your voice sounding more natural and your listening improving. Thomas also told me that recording himself was a game changer because it gave him feedback. When you hear yourself, you can notice what sounds robotic or unnatural. You can compare your voice to the original and adjust. This kind of self-awareness speeds up your learning because you're actively noticing and correcting mistakes. Another tip is to focus not just on words, but on stress and intonation. English speakers stress certain words to show importance or emotion. When you shadow, try to copy those stresses and the melody of sentences. This makes your English sound much more fluent. It also helps you understand native speakers better because you're learning the natural patterns they use. Remember, shadowing is not about speaking perfectly or sounding like a native immediately. It's about training your brain and mouth to work together smoothly. This way, you can listen and speak more confidently. It's a practice that builds muscle memory for your voice and helps you catch the natural rhythm of English conversations. If you want to start shadowing, pick a short audio that feels interesting to you. Listen carefully. Then record yourself repeating after the speaker. Do this a few times every day. After a week or two, listen to your recordings. Notice how your rhythm and tone improve. You'll be surprised at how much more natural your English sounds. Thomas's journey shows us that shadowing is a powerful tool, but it requires patience and practice. It's normal to sound robotic at first. That's your brain and mouth adjusting to a new rhythm. But if you keep going, you'll start to sound more natural and fluent. You'll understand spoken English better because your brain is learning to hear the language as it really is. Not just words, but rhythm, tone, and emotion. If you want to boost both your listening and speaking skills, try recording yourself and shadowing dialogues. Let your voice become a mirror of natural English. This simple daily practice can make a big difference in how you understand and use the language. Keep practicing and enjoy the process of finding your own natural rhythm in English. Remember, learning English is a journey, one that takes patience, practice, and a willingness to keep moving forward, even when it feels challenging. Shadowing trains not just your mouth, but your mind to connect with the natural flow of the language. Every time you practice, you're building a stronger, more confident version of yourself. So don't be discouraged by the awkward moments or the robotic sound at first. Those are signs that you're growing. Keep showing up. Keep listening. Keep repeating. Because with each step, you're getting closer to English without limits, where speaking and understanding flow naturally, and confidence becomes your new normal. You have the tools, you have the power. Now, it's your turn to use them. Keep practicing and remember, you're capable of amazing progress. I'm Julia, and this is English Without Limit. See you in the next episode.